Welcome back to another episode of Time Out with the Sports Doctor. I want to start off this podcast by saying thank you, not only to my listeners, but to the previous guest and for everyone who's continued to support this podcast over the last 2.5 years. On Father's Day of 2021, we went off on this adventure of Time Out with the Sports Doctor, not really knowing where it would take me or all the interesting guests that I would come into contact with. But over the last 2.5 years, we have released 133 episodes, one every week. And, that's an accomplishment. So one thing that I struggle with sometimes is giving myself credit for what I do. I tend to downplay my accomplishments. I'd rather somebody else on the back than to pat my own self on the back. But being able to show up consistently for the last 130 weeks to produce episodes is an accomplishment. And it's not something that I was able to do alone, which is even better. It's something that I was able to do because of the community that we've developed on this podcast. So thank you for everyone who's come on as a guest to share, starting to get some data about the podcast. I've had over 25 medical specialties represented on this podcast, which is over 35 to 40 individual medical professionals, from orthopedic surgeons to pediatric dentists to ER physicians, psychologists, psychiatrists, pharmacists, and also having pro and collegiate athletes, having entrepreneurs of all sorts, lawyers, accountants, CPAs. So that's something that I pride myself with, which is the diversity on this podcast, not only from an age and gender standpoint, also race, but from a specialty standpoint as well, because I feel that this is truly the place where life, sports, and medicine intersects. Many people that come on this podcast might check every box that I was talking about: a former athlete who is a professional, who is a medical professional, or who is an entrepreneur. So what we do is stick to the main principles that we started off with to help you strengthen your mindset, to help you grow your assets, and to help you achieve whatever level of success that you want to achieve. First, you have to define what success means to you. And then we want to give you practical tips and tools of how to achieve that. And I feel one way of doing that is by showing many different stories of success, or about sharing those stories of success, and by being able to connect individuals together. Because this platform is not only for me to be able to get here and give a message. I want to be able to amplify as many stories as possible, and to be able to show that success is achievable no matter where you come from, no matter how you started, and that you, as long as you have determination, drive, and grit and willingness to overcome obstacles, which is, I feel, a part of the formula for success, you can do whatever you want to do. So what we're going to do today, we're going to look back over some of the top episodes from 2023. This is something that I like to do, but at the same time, just because an episode got more downloads or more views does not mean that it is a better episode than anything else, because I feel that there's quality in every episode and it hits home with different audiences. But that's what I want to do. I want to build a library of audio and visual content so that when I meet someone who might be going through a certain situation, I have a referral basis to connect them with. So we're going to go through some of the top moments on this podcast in the last year. One thing I've been thinking about for a while, I was talking about the diversity on this podcast, but I wanted to make it open to as many people as possible. So going into 2024, I'm going to come up with an open mic concept, so to speak. But if you know someone who you want to hear from on this podcast, or if have a friend or colleague that would connect well with this audience, please share their information. There's an intake form we'll include in the show notes that you can fill out for not only yourself or for someone else, and make that referral. We'll greatly appreciate it. So tune into this episode. I hope you enjoy it. I hope everyone's having a good holiday season as it approaches, with Thanksgiving, as well with Christmas right around the corner. I know this can be a stressful time for many people, but we're here. We're going to continue to give you content each and every week. And thank you for your support. On Time Out with the Sports Doctor, this is your final time out. I want you to be able to just kind of talk about your life in general. Grew up in India, coming to the United States, being able to see a different way of living. How has that all kind of played into what you're doing now and your hunger to be able to become financially free?
Yes, so like I said, progress is happiness, and that means a lot to me. I want to be able to not only do it for myself. If I can do it, I think anybody can do it. Starting from basketball and then going into medicine, and exploring real estate and doing real estate. I think when you set your hearts and minds into something, you can do whatever you want. And it's just the mindset.
Yeah.
And I want to keep that mindset going. And there's a lot to have in this world. It's an abundance mindset, but always keep in mind that you always have should always have a place to serve others. And that's the basis of humanity, and that's what I truly believe in.
I encourage anybody out there that want to quit, keep going. Keep going. Recently, I just started a mentorship program. We got a mentorship program at the high school, kind of high school. I go in once a month and we teach them about culinary. And I got another mentorship where I do some work at the junior high, teach them how to do interview skills. And once a month, we go in and give a young man a shirt and a tie so he can get ready for his next interview. I mean, so it's not just about, at first, when I first moved out here, I hated it. I didn't like Lubbock at first. And God came to me and he said, Rod, stop looking at what Lubbock could do for you and look at what you can do for Lubbock. And my whole life changed.
And this is a concept that I'm thinking more and more about. There's no philosophical reference, but it just makes sense in my head. The way that I think about it is there's so much we're meant to do in this world, and there are many, almost like mini lifetimes we have in one lifetime, right?
Right.
Where my life before now was one lifetime, and this year I get to experience a whole lifetime. And then when I get back from this and I go back to clinical medicine, whatever that's going to look like, that's going to be a different lifetime. And if we keep hoarding, right? And I'm a GI doc, so y'all know I'm going to talk about poop. But if you literally keep keeping the poop that needs to get out, which is the
Yeah.
stuff you need to get done, you're not
Yeah.
going to get the flow of the stool that needs to get out. So y'all going to be walking about constipated and obstipated because you kept on keeping that plug of stuff, which may be a book you need to write, or a business you need to start, a program you need to take, a podcast you need to subscribe to. Like, just get it out, because the gold that needs to come out just needs to come out after
Yeah.
this. But it's not going to come out because you're not going to be the right person yet until you do the stuff that you need to do.
On Time Out with the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So, you've come a long way, and I'm proud of you for what you achieved and what you've overcome to achieve, right? Like you mentioned, life wasn't easy for you. And there's not a lot of people giving away things in Mississippi, as you know. Sometimes there's a lot of promises, but not a lot of follow through. But you've been able to make it to the highest league in professional football, and that's something that you cannot take for granted. So speak to the young athlete, who feels like they have the chips stacked against them, matter what their circumstance is now, about how they can continue to chase their dreams and continue to achieve, whatever level of success that they want.
Athlete, keep working. I was once in that position myself. I was once, as you saw already, I was once one of those guys who came out with 0 stars, who was scrawny, who a lot of people thought, man, he may not make it as far as he do. Maybe when he get to college, he'll never play a snap, but you just got to keep chopping the wood. And the most important thing, you got to have confidence in yourself. If you don't have confidence and faith in yourself, then you'll never be able to make it to where you want to be. And, just keep chopping the wood, man. You got to hit the weight room. That's an important part as well. You got to keep the strength in your body that could prevent most of those injuries. Keep your technique clean. Just keep working, man. Everything will work out in due time. And even when I had times where I felt like I wanted to give up sometimes, where I wanted to quit, where I may felt like that workout was too hard. Even with me having 3 surgeries on my knees, I never stopped right there, because I knew the destination that I wanted to make it to. And I knew that I had people behind me that were supportive of me as well. And I know as a young athlete, you have a lot of people who are supportive as you. And as you go along and it may not work out as you wanted to, you got to still keep that faith in yourself. Just keep working, man. It's somebody with you. You always need a team. That's another thing, man. You always need a team. There's nothing that you can be done, nothing that you can do alone. So just keep working.
I've had a recent epiphany. Wow, I almost started to cry. I'm going to try to get through this without crying. So I had really bad COVID last week. And historically, I've been able to work sick, right? We already kind of touched on that part.
Right.
I could not do anything. For 4 days, I was out. I had to cancel meetings. I had crazy guilt about canceling meetings. I had crazy anxiety about not cooking dinner for my kids who are now 14 and 16. And I had a resounding epiphany that even now, right, 10 years later, I still put a lot of my self-worth in doing and producing and accomplishing. And we're talking about 4 days that I still did not have the grace to give myself a break. And literally was apologizing to my husband and kids for being useless. And they looked at me and they're like, what are you talking about? You did not choose to have COVID. You did not choose that it was going to knock you out like this. It's okay to take a break. And I'm like, wise children.
Back in my hair, have fishes in it, and a bird nest. And then we'll be like, God is my protector. God loves me. I'm a good giver. I'm a good student. I'm creative, smart. We'll go do that, and it'll make me feel like really good if I'm stressed over a test that I'm ready to do this, but I don't have the confidence. And then we'll wake up and we'll do those. I'm like, I'm ready to do this, and I'll ace it.
So what's your favorite affirmation, Derrick?
That I am a child of God.
I'm a child of God. That's a great one. What's my favorite one? What do y'all think my favorite affirmation?
I'm a good giver.
I give up being...
I give up being perfect for being authentic.
So what does that one mean to you?
I think it means like...
Well,
Derrick, there you go. Rather being perfect than being authentic means that rather than trying to fit in, be different.
All right, be yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to be yourself.
It means not to be the only, you don't have to be glazed donut in a glazed donut river. You can be a donut with sparkles and sprinkles and strawberry ice cream on it.
So be your unique donut.
Yeah, be a unique donut.
All
and
right.
eventually you'll taste yummy.
So if you could move without having to undergo the change and transition, would you be excited about it?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing with change, with life. I've been through a lot of change, right? So we moved a lot because of training. We moved a lot because of jobs.
I
was talking to
Dan about that. So I haven't had one stable place my whole life. I've been moving all the time.
But what's the benefit of that, would you say?
Probably meeting new people and meeting new personalities and having a good impact. But sometimes it's not always the same. You learn something different every time.
Well, on Timeout with the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So Coach Tony, hey, you already know how important that final timeout is. Use it wisely, right? But as we're talking about this, I'm hearing the word legacy, right? So, what do you want, or how do you want to impact the legacy of the family? Just each person, just kind of think on that. And what does the family legacy, what we're carrying on? We know that we were kings and queens, right? And so many times that you can forget that, and you just know that we see the struggle when we look at American history. Many times we just see the struggle of fighting for freedom and fighting for justice and fighting for the ability to be in the same room. And now we've been able to be into that room, and we've been able to benefit from the emancipation, and we've been able to benefit from civil rights. But there's more, right? It's not just surviving. So what do you want our family legacy to be? What do you want the legacy to be that we're going to pass on to the next generation?
Oh man, I look at it as Derek, we've been here since sharecroppers, right? And now we're here in space age, and it's still growing. Our kids, our little cousins are going to see things that we're never going to see, experience things that we're probably never going to get an opportunity to experience. So, me personally, I would like to see the legacy go back to those big reunions that I mentioned a moment ago, back to where the family gets together. Because nowadays, as they say, you got social media, you got things like this. You can now, I'd have never thought, I started off, for those that don't know, I started off in communication when communication was just now popping off in the early 90s. Spent 17 years of that, doing that. And I remember building networks, and we were just laughing going out the 1G, right? Now we have 5Gs. I would never have imagined a George Jetson type cartoon for reality, that you can get on a driverless car and it take you shopping, or take you to the airport, or you can order food, sit on your couch, and someone rings your doorbell, and drops it off, or grocery shop. All those to me are things that have, made society easier to deal with, but it's made it lazier to become close to your family, because when you can't do something, the first excuse is, well, just, phone me up, or just, well, we get on FaceTime, we can do this and that. It's not the same as being in your face and laughing and joking and touching you and talking to you. So I hope the legacy of the family, man, is just to make sure that this year, when we get to the family union, we kind of set the next decade up. And not just, who can we do this and that over the next few years. I think the great idea was every other year have it back at home in Alabama, right? So that makes it easy. So why not look at the next 5 years outside? We know next year we're working to get it here in Nashville with me. Then I think this year we should already be working on, going to 27 wherever else. And I think that as you come with that plan, you kind of have an idea. Okay, gotcha. I see where we're going over the next few years, and you can build on that. And then I think that builds that legacy within itself.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you, Tony. I agree 100% with you, and I think it's like you said, it's someone stepping forward and being the example and saying, "Hey, if I can do it, you can do it." And it's the legacy I would like to see for the family is, like you said, when we old and gray, that I hope the family is still coming together.
Right.
And so that would be the legacy, and seeing it pass on, and not just, like you said before, Tony, like you saw a gap where it just stopped. And so, and that's the one thing about anything you do, whether it's podcasts, reunions, or whatever else, if you ever allow the momentum to die, it's hard to get it back. So just like everything else that we put in our work, our careers and everything, it's consistency, and it's showing up every day. And I see the same for our families, is we just got to show up and be there. If some won't, then we may have to be the ones to step up and do it. But that's part of leadership. And I think that's the role of us as men of the family, is we got to be the leaders that move us forward into the next decade. But if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
All right. So
You're
on Time Out with
welcome.
the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So, number one, thank you for sharing. This has been an awesome episode. And I think the Guard My Practice that you built is going to really impact the healthcare environment in general, especially the education piece that you're doing. And, somebody's sitting there saying, wow, she's already done it, I can't do it. And many times we second guess ourselves. But what did you have to overcome? Because you're already been in practice for 20 years. And then you say, you know what, I want to start something new. What did you have to overcome as far as imposter syndrome or whatever to do what you're doing now?
That is such a great question. In fact, I have a surgeon, and we're both like entrepreneurs. I'm a lawyer, she's a surgeon, but we both kind of act as a sounding board for each other. That imposter syndrome is real. Like, if I'm a almost 22-year health lawyer who has a lot of knowledge, and I've done this, and I think, oh man, I suck at this. What was I thinking? How many times have I laid in bed going, what was I doing? Why did I start this? I could have just been happy in my law firm, and I could have just been happy with that. Why did I start this whole other thing? And yet, when you get to the other side of it and you start selling and it starts being extra income, and you realize, okay, my vision, trust your vision. I think that's what I'm saying. And that's what we have to tell each other when we're in the throes of the bad situation, where it's like, we're not selling enough. We really thought this would be more popular really early on. is just, you had that vision back like 2 years ago for a reason, right? You had that gut feeling that's like, do this. This is needed. You're going to solve a problem in the world. And I kid you not, this is how I feel about it, Derrick. But I feel that if 5 people watch these videos and it solved their problems, like, it's just like if you help one person, right? I mean, it's still valuable. So I don't care at the end of the day. I don't want to go broke, but I don't care how successful it is as long as it helps the people that watch it. And maybe that is a lesson for when you start something. You're like, well, am I helping anyone? So maybe it's worth it. Maybe that one person that I save is going to save humanity. Not to be a video game, but you just never know. So you just have to look at that like instinct. It's like, I had this instinct for a reason. I happen to be a very faithful person. So I'm like, if I have these yearnings and these leanings, I follow them because I feel like there's a reason for it. So I think that's my advice. It's just really got to trust your gut.
So on Timeout with the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So you've shared a lot about your background and your story. And, thank you for sharing that background, because it makes me understand and it helps the audience relate more to your drive. But there's many people who have ideas and have a determination to make a change, but feel inferior. That's one word that you mentioned, or are paralyzed with the fear of what could go wrong. So if you could just speak to someone who knows they have an idea, know that they have a way that they can really impact the world, but are stuck in getting started. Just speak to that person for me.
I think for me, it's reframing the way you look at negative experiences. So when I look back and I've said I don't relate to that person, but I still carry all those lessons. And I think the biggest thing was adversity. If you're coming from that kind of perspective, adversity does not define who you are. It's not the totality of who you are.
Yes.
And if you reframe it in a positive way and say, adversity gives you skills and experiences and a mindset that you can carry through life, and whatever you are faced with, you're going to be okay. You're going to deal with it. That yes, it might be hard. It might, for a while, you might have to take a step back, but you're still moving forward. And to keep focused on that, adversity makes you stronger.
Yes.
And it actually, for me, I look at it as having been a positive thing to get me to where I am in my life now, and not just now, but to carry me through the rest of my life. So those valuable skills learned through adversity, I see as a positive. I don't see them as a negative at all. And that it's about self-growth. And so don't focus on when people say to me, they focus on getting rich and the financial wealth. You're looking at the wrong things, because I've been there and I've been in that position, and I absolutely know that mindset. But then when you start to think about, why do you want those things? Why do you want the finances? Why do you want the wealth? And actually what we're looking for is to be happy. And so look at other ways that can make you, and people say, yeah, but those material things will make me happy. They won't, because it's not until you think they will, and it's not until you get them, you realize how unimportant they really are. So you can have your nice sports cars, you can have a nice house, you can have a boat, you can have all those things. And then when you get them, you realize, I really don't feel that different. It's not brought me what I expected it to bring me. And I don't know if you've heard of, there's a UK entrepreneur called Stephen Bartlett. No. And he's an amazing young man. And he wrote a book called Happy, Sexy Millionaire. So he had set himself a target of achieving £1 million. And this is what he expected. These were his goals. He was going to be happy. He was going to be sexy. He was going to develop this six-pack, and he was going to be this millionaire. So those were the, that's what he was only a very young man when he set those goals for himself. And then when he achieved it, he said he felt really deflated, that actually his expectations of what it would feel like to get there did not meet the reality of being in that situation. So going on to say that you read so many books that push you down this route of wealth is the panacea, and with wealth will come happiness. It will not, because it's about, you can't run away from yourself, and you can't, your own expectations of what that's going to bring you. You have to really think about that. So it's about I think, a journey about yourself. It's a journey about learning, not how much money I can get, because a great quote I like is, there are no pockets in shrouds, and no one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. Right. So I always think of those things. So it's about a journey of learning about yourself, who you are, what you want out of life, and what is important to you in life. And you can be so rich without 10 designer handbags and 3 sports cars. You can be rich in different ways. That's not to say that you can be totally happy if you've got nothing either. It's money doesn't buy you happiness, and I do get that without money, you can be very unhappy.
On Timeout with the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So first of all, thank you for your time. Thank you for bringing this wealth of knowledge to the podcast. But what I want you to do, most people will say, okay, he's training with these elite athletes, sure, but you didn't just walk into this job, right?
No.
Like you mentioned, you've taken your life experience, you've taken failures, you've taken success, and you've used that all to get to where you are now. So just speak to that person who has large dreams, and things might not be going exactly the way that they want them right now, but how they can push through adversity to still achieve success in the end.
It's a cliche that you have to believe. First of all, your gifts will make room for you. And if you truly believe you're operating within your gifts, then you have to walk in faith in that. And you have to trust that process. But you have a responsibility to pour into that gift so it can be expanded upon. That's totally on you. But you have to first start with your belief. If you believe in that, that's what you're supposed to do, then you do everything in your power to be successful at it. God to do the rest. Is there time and there's a window where you're not achieving the things that you feel like you should, check yourself out of that, because a lot of the times we fall short is because of our own expectations. There should be any expectation you put on yourself, because then you're not allowed to embrace the process of development. There is a process that God puts you through, and I'm a man of faith, that time's needed for you to develop for what he has planned for you in the future. But he's not going to allow you to move too fast if you're not ready, because then you're going to squander it. So be patient and embrace it. The journey changes anyway. Right. Doing that process. That's where all the fun is. It's in the process of learning all the skills that develop over time. And when you look up, you're like, oh shoot, you'll reach a point that you might forget some of the, just as much as you are gaining knowledge as you're growing and developing at whatever you're trying to do. All my athletes were children in the beginning. Some of them athletes that were children are now pros that I'm still coaching to this day. 5 and 6 year olds, 8-9 years in the league. How many people can say that? At the time, I was like, this has got to happen.
Yeah.
But now, I have a story to tell. But when I had to check myself, when I started putting these self-expectations in front of me of what I felt like I should be. And we live in a society now to where it's crazy because of social media. And you see all these things just distracting, telling you where you should be at this stage of your career. No, your journey is your journey. And your timing of when it's time for you to blossom will come, but stay within that and keep trusting that process. And I don't even want to use the cliche, trust the process, walk in faith, and things will come together for you.
Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, subscribe so you continue to get the updated episodes. Until later, peace.
Hey, time out with the sports doctor. Keep our head right in the game. We ain't never stopping. You are now tuned in. Trust you don't want to miss. This is where life, sports, and medicine.